They told the alien mother, "Your child is dead." Then a human soldier brought the child back alive. The room where the Kesari told mothers that their children were dead had been chosen for its quietness. It sat on the third terrace of what was left of Ashenvale, in a records annex that the slip had spared by about 11 meters, and it had thick stone walls, a floor of packed blue clay, and one narrow window that let in a bar of afternoon light the color of weak tea. There was a table. There were 2 chairs on one side and one on the other. There was a lamp that did not work anymore because nothing in that quarter had power except the relief generators, and the relief generators were rationed to the medical tents and the pumps. Lance Corporal Wren Halloway stood against the back wall of that room, holding a box, and tried very hard to be furniture. She was 19 years old. She had been on Kel Ashen for 11 days. In that time she had moved something like 400 tons of broken terrace stone with a shovel, a pry bar, and a machine called a lifting frame that fought her the whole way, and she had slept an average of 4 hours a night on a cot that smelled like other people's dust. Her hands had blistered, torn, healed wrong, and torn again. There was a permanent gray line under each of her fingernails that she had stopped trying to scrub out. None of that was the hard part. The hard part was the box. It weighed almost nothing. It was a standard Concord recovery container, pale gray composite, about the size of a loaf of bread, and it had a printed label on the lid with a registry number, and a name in both the Kesari script and the blocky Terran transliteration underneath. ASHELTULI, age 6, grid 19, low market, ASHNVIL. Inside it, Wren knew, because she had been the one to seal it, were 3 things: a child's coat clip shaped like a river fish, a hearth token of green glass with a family sign melted into it, and a single small shoe that had been found in the silt of a stairwell 200 meters from where the child had last been seen. That was all. That was the whole box. Across the table from the empty chairs, the registrar was arranging his papers. His name was Sevesh Anlon, and he was, by Kesari standards, a handsome man, tall even for his people, which meant he had to duck under Terran door frames, with the long silver-gray skin of the high-country hearths and the flat, dark, whetstone eyes that Wren had learned not to find unnerving. His throat membrane, the soft ridged panel under his jaw that Kesari used to hum with, was pulled tight and still. That meant something. Wren had picked up enough in 11 days to know that a Kesari with a still throat was a Kesari, holding himself very carefully together. He had a stack of forms. He squared them again. "You do not have to be here, soldier," he said without looking up. His Terran was good, formal, a little old-fashioned, learned off Concord broadcasts. "This is not a duty of yours." "I carried the box up, sir," Wren said. "Sergeant said carry it up, didn't say put it down and go." "Then put it down and go." "Respectfully, sir, I'll wait until she's got it." Anlon looked at her then. Wren was not tall. She had a round, sunburned, unremarkable face and pale brown hair. She cut herself with utility shears badly, and she was wearing the same coveralls she had been wearing for 4 days, and she looked, she knew, like exactly what she was. A 19-year-old private with a corporal's stripe she had held for 6 months, standing in a room where she did not belong, holding a box she did not want to hold. Whatever Anlon saw in her, he decided not to fight it. "Then stand where you are," he said, "and do not speak. Whatever you feel you must say, do not say it. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir." "You will want to. Your species always wants to." He turned back to his papers, and his voice went even flatter, the way a man's voice goes when he is walking a plank he has walked too many times. "You will want to tell her that you are sorry. You will want to tell her that you did everything you could. You will want to tell her that her daughter did not suffer, which you do not know and cannot know and have no right to say. It is very kind of you. It is also for you and not for her. So you will stand there and you will be silent, and when she takes the box you will let her take it, and then you will leave." Wren's jaw tightened. "Yes, sir." Good, said Registrar Sevesh Anlon, and then the door opened, and Yenna Ashal came in. Later, Wren would try to explain it to people who had not been in the room, and she would never quite get it right. She would say she was small, which was true for a Kesari. Yenna Ashal was barely taller than Wren herself, which made her something like a very short woman in a world of very tall ones. She was a glass annealer by trade, which meant she had spent 20 years standing in front of kiln mouths letting hot things cool down slowly so that they would not shatter, and it had left her with the forearms of someone who worked, and burned freckles up to the elbow and a squint. She would say she was clean, which was the thing that broke Wren, actually, and she never managed to make anyone understand why. Everyone in Ashenvale was filthy. Everyone had been filthy for 9 days. The water was rationed and the dust from the slip got into everything, and there was a fine gray grit in your teeth always. And Yenna Ashal had come to this room in a coat that had been brushed. Her hands had been washed. The dark ropes of her hair had been rebound, tight and neat, in the way Kesari women bound them for a formal calling. She had gotten dressed. She had made herself presentable. She had done that this morning in a shelter tent with 80 other people in it, using her water ration, because she was going to be told about her daughter and she wanted to be worthy of the telling. She sat down in the chair. She put her hands flat on the table. She looked at the registrar and waited. "Hearthkeeper Ashal," Anlon said. "Registrar, you know why you have been called." "I know what it means when I am called by you and not by a warden," Yenna said. Her Terran was rough, functional. She had it because the Kiln Consortium bought its heat glass from Terran suppliers. She wasn't speaking it for Wren's benefit. She was speaking it, Wren thought, because it was a language she could hold at arm's length. "Say it. I have stood a long time." Anlon looked down at his forms. There was a script for this. Wren could see it printed right there, and she watched him look at it and then not use it. "Your daughter Chili Ashal is dead," he said. "The search of Grid 19 has ended. It ended at noon today on the 9th day. The Concord will not resume it." The bar of tea-colored light moved a finger's width across the clay floor. 9 days, Yenna said. 9 days is the standard. It is not a cruelty, Hearthkeeper. It is a mercy. After 9 days beneath a collapse of that mass without water. There is water down there. Without safe water, without air circulation, in an unstable zone that has settled 4 times in 9 days. Anlon stopped himself, started again, quieter. The engineers have red-tagged the whole of Grid 19. To send crews back in is to bury more people. The Concord will not do it. The Terran Relief Command has agreed. The registry is closed. I am sorry. "You are sorry," said Yenna Ashal. "Yes. Everyone is sorry. The wardens are sorry. The Terrans are sorry. They are so very sorry they will not stop being sorry at me." Her hands were still flat on the table. They did not shake. That was the other thing Wren would try and fail to explain later. Nothing about the woman shook. "I do not want sorry. I want a crew and a light in 8 hours. There is no crew to give you." "Then give me the light." "Hearthkeeper." "Give me the light, Registrar, and I will go into Grid 19 myself, and you may write my name in your book under hers, and then your book will be tidy." Anlon set his hands on his papers. Wren saw the throat membrane under his jaw flutter once, just once, before he clamped it still again. "If you go into the red zone," he said, "the wardens will stop you at the line. If you go around the line, the ground will stop you. And then a child who has lost her mother will have lost her mother twice, and I do not say that to be cruel. I say it because it is true and because someone in this room must say true things." He pushed the forms across the table. "The Anlon is set for the 6th hour tomorrow. All the hearths that lost together. It will be done properly. She will be named among the still. She will be kept." Yenna did not look at the forms. "Kept," she said. "Kept. You know what my hearth name means, Registrar? Ashal, old word. It means the one who waits by the door." She said it without heat, almost pleasantly, and that was worse. "My grandmother waited 11 years for a man who did not come back from the ice, and she was mocked for it, and she was right to do it, because when he did not come back, she was the only one who could say his name without flinching. That is what my hearth does. We wait by the door, so I will tell you what you may do with your Anlon and your book and your 9th day. She stood up. I will wait, she said, by the door as long as it takes. She turned and she saw the box. Wren had forgotten she was holding it. She had been standing so still, so hard for so long, that she had somehow convinced herself she was not really there. And then the mother's eyes came up and found the gray composite container in a soldier's arms, and Wren watched the exact moment when Yenna Ashal understood what it was. It was the first time anything in the woman moved. It was very small. It was just a hitch high in the chest, like a woman missing a step on a stair she knew, and then her face closed like a kiln door. She crossed the room. Wren, without being told, held the box out. Yenna took it. She did not open it. She held it against her body with both arms, the way you hold something that is not that heavy, in a way that suggests it weighs more than a building. And she looked up at Wren. She had to look up only a little, and Wren, 19 years old, with grit in her teeth and a dead child's shoe in a box she had just handed over, opened her mouth to say the thing she had been ordered not to say. I'm sorry. She didn't say it. She had promised. She stood there with her mouth half open and her throat working, and she did not say it, and Yenna Ashal watched her not say it, and something in the alien woman's flat dark eyes changed, not softened, exactly. Focused. You dug, Yenna said. Wren's voice came out wrong. Ma'am. Your hands. Yenna nodded at them, at the split knuckles, the black nails, the tape. You dug. Yes, ma'am. Where? Grid 19, ma'am, Low Market, sections 4 through 9. I was on the, her throat closed. She got it open. I was on the stair crew. We did the stairwell, where they found the shoe. Yenna Ashal nodded slowly. Then you are the only person in this room, she said, who has been where my daughter is. And she walked out with the box, and the door swung shut behind her, and Lance Corporal Wren Halloway stood in the quiet room with her empty hands out in front of her, still holding nothing at all. She was supposed to go straight back to the staging yard. She got about 40 meters. There was a colonnade on the 3rd terrace, a long open walk of gray pillars that had held up something once and now held up sky, and at the far end of it, where the walk gave out onto a view of the whole ruined bowl of Ashenvale, Yenna Ashal had stopped. She was standing at the broken rail. The box was on the ground by her feet. She was looking out over Grid 19. From up there you could see the whole shape of it, and the shape of it was a wound. Ashenvale had been built in terraces, 11 of them, stepping down the flank of the Corin escarpment like a stack of plates. Old city, 2,000 years of it, cisterns under cisterns, market galleries carved into the living rock, hearth blocks stacked on hearth blocks, all of it locked together by nothing but weight and habit. 9 days ago, at 20 minutes past midday, on a market day, a fault 12 kilometers down had shrugged in its sleep, and 4 of those plates had slid. Not fallen, slid. The low market, Grid 19, had gone down and sideways together, a wedge of city 300 meters across, and it had folded down into the cistern galleries beneath it and packed itself in there like a fist into a glove. 1,100 people, 9 days. 640 had come out alive in the first 4 days. Wren had carried some of them. It was the best number anybody had a right to expect. The relief command had been publicly praised for it. The rest were under that. And Yenna Ashal stood at the rail and looked down at the place where her daughter was, and she began, very quietly, to hum. Wren stopped walking. It was not like human humming. Kesari made it in the throat membrane, not the mouth, and it came out low, lower than a human voice could go, low enough that Wren felt it in the bones behind her ears before she properly heard it. 3 notes, down, down, and then a long, low one that hung. Then a gap. Then the same 3 notes again. Down, down, hold. Gap. Down, down, hold. She had heard it before. She realized that with a small, cold shock. She had heard it a dozen times in 11 days in the shelter tents in the med lines, mothers doing it over sleeping children, an old man doing it while they cut him out of a stairwell. She had assumed it was a prayer. She had never asked. She stood in the colonnade and listened to an alien woman hum 3 notes at a mountain of broken stone, over and over, patient as a metronome. And she thought, the thought arriving all at once, whole, unwelcome, and impossible to put down again. That's not a prayer, that's a call. She's calling. What has she been calling to for 9 days? The sun went down the color of a banked fire. In the staging yard below, the relief command began, in an orderly and professional manner, to crate up its listening gear. Wren Halloway watched them do it, and something in her, quiet and stubborn and about 19 years old, sat down in the dirt and refused to move. The listening gear lived in a green canvas structure the relief command called the ear, which was parked at the edge of the staging yard on 6 fat tires, and had a hand-lettered sign on the door that said quiet, IDIOTS. Specialist Duro Pike was inside it, packing. He was 24, narrow, permanently annoyed, and the best acoustic tech in the battalion, which he would tell you himself at length without being asked. He had a bad shoulder from a hab collapse on Sever 9, a habit of chewing the ends of his stylus, and an opinion about everything. Wren had worked 2 rotations with him. She had once seen him hear a man breathing through 9 meters of rubble and rebar and put a finger on the exact spot on a plan sheet, and be right. He looked up when she came in and said, "No. You don't know what I'm going to ask. You've got the face. It's the face people get when they want me to unpack something." He snapped a foam case shut. "The answer is no. The reason is that the array's crated. The deeper reason is that the grid is red-tagged. And the actual reason, Halloway, is that we're wheels up in 40 hours and I would like to sleep at some point during them. I want the grid 19 logs." Pike stopped. "The what?" "The logs, all 9 days. Everything the array picked up under low market." "Why?" Wren told him about the humming. She told it badly. She was tired and she was still shaking a little from the room with the box, and she kept starting sentences and abandoning them, but she got it out. The 3 notes, the mother at the rail, the gap, the repeat. The fact that every Kesari she'd seen for 11 days did it over children in the dark. Pike listened with his arms folded, and his mouth doing something complicated. "You want me," he said, "to unpack a 400-kilo geophone array in the dark 40 hours from Demob because an alien lady was singing. I want to look at the logs, that's all. You don't have to unpack anything, the logs are on the drive." "And what am I looking for?" "Whatever you filtered out." That got him. She saw it land, the little twitch at the corner of his eye that meant he'd heard something he didn't like the shape of. "Filtered," he repeated. "You told me first week. You said the array runs everything through a mask because otherwise it's just noise, because a city makes noise, because pumps make noise and water makes noise and settling stone makes noise. So you cut it down to the bands where you'd hear a person." She stepped closer. "A person? Whose person, Pike?" "That's..." "Whose voice? Who's knocking? What's the band?" Duro Pike stood very still in his crated-up green box of a truck, and Wren watched a 24-year-old man be handed a thought he was going to hate for the rest of his life. "Terran vocal range," he said slowly. 85 to 250 for the low end, and we widened it. We widened it for Kesari first day, they briefed us. Adult Kesari throat hum runs low. We dropped the floor to 40. To 40. To 40 Hertz. He was already turning. He was already reaching for the drive rack he'd just packed. And below 40 is... "Noise," Wren said. "Below 40 is structure, water, pumps, noise." "Below 40 is where a big building groans," Pike said. And I have never in my life needed to hear anything a human being can't make, because a human being can't make it. They looked at each other in the dark of the truck. Kesari kids, Wren said. Their membranes aren't grown in. They can't hit an adult tone. Everybody knows that. They hum flat and low until they're about 9. It's a whole thing. The mothers teach them the hearth song and the kid comes back an octave under. Pike was already ripping the foam out of a case. Get the door, he said. Get the door and get me a lamp and do not, under any circumstances, tell Rook. It took them until the 3rd hour past midnight. The logs were 9 days deep, and the array had been running 11 sensors over the Grid 19 footprint, and every one of them was a river of data that had been, at capture, politely and automatically shaved of everything the software had been told was garbage. But the raw was still there. That was the thing about Pike. He never trusted a filter enough to throw away what it ate. Because filters are opinions, he muttered, hunched over the reader with his stylus in his teeth. That's all they are. Somebody's opinion about what matters, running at 10,000 samples a second forever, with no idea it's got an opinion. He pulled the mask off sensor 6 at 04:14 on day 3, and there it was. He didn't say anything. He just went very still and then reached over without looking and turned the display so Wren could see it. 11 Hertz. Barely. A smear of energy down at the bottom of the world in the mud of the spectrum, where the pumps thrummed and the aquifer moved, and 100,000 tons of broken city settled on its haunches. Down, down, hold. Gap. Down, down, hold. Perfectly, mechanically, inhumanly regular, every 4.5 seconds. For 19 minutes. Then nothing for 6 hours. Then again at 10:50 for 11 minutes. Wren's ears were roaring. That's a pump, she heard herself say, and she didn't know why she said it, except that some part of her was so terrified of being wrong that it wanted to be wrong immediately and get it over with. That's not a pump. Pike's voice had gone strange and quiet. He was scrolling fast, both hands. Pumps don't rest. Pumps don't look, day 4, day 5, day 6. It's every day, every single day, Halloway. It's shorter every day, but it's every day. Day 7, 4 minutes, day 8. He stopped. Day 8, 2 minutes and 10 seconds, he said. 09:40. Day 9. Pike scrolled. His jaw was tight. Day 9, he said. The array was shut down at noon because we closed the grid. The little green truck was very quiet. There's 40 minutes of day 9, Pike said, before noon. He played it. It came out of the speaker as almost nothing, a rumble under a rumble, a pressure in the room rather than a sound in it, the kind of thing you feel in your sternum and your fillings. Down, down, hold, gap. Down, down, hold. 50 seconds of it. And then it stopped in the middle of a phrase, the way a thing stops when whoever is making it has run out of air or heart or hope and has to lie down for a while and gather more. Wren Halloway put both hands flat on the console and breathed. Pike, she said. I know. Pike, we've been listening for 9 days. I know. We had 11 sensors on it, and we heard her every single day, and the machine told us it was asterisk plumbing. I asterisk no asterisk, Duro, Pike shouted, and then put his face in his hands, and for a moment neither of them said anything at all, because there was nothing to say that was any use, and because the only thing in the world worth doing was already obvious and they both knew what it was going to cost. Sergeant O'Dolly's Rook heard them out at 0500, with a mug of something in her hand and her boots unlaced. She was 33, built like a loading crane, and had a scar across her chin from a piece of rebar on a world neither of them had heard of. She was the best NCO Wren had ever served under, which meant she was patient, unfoolable, and utterly unmoved by anything except evidence. She listened to the recording twice. She looked at the day-by-day plot. 19 minutes, then 14, then 11, then 9, then 6, then 4, then 2, then 50 seconds. She set the mug down. "Coordinator's tent," she said. "Now, both of you. Halloway, you talk, Pike, you play the file, and neither of you says one word about anybody's mother." Mission Coordinator Merritt Vance had been awake for most of 9 days, and it showed. He was a big, gray, careful man in his 50s who had run relief operations on 4 worlds and had, taped to the wall behind his field desk, a hand-drawn chart of the 640 living people his crews had pulled out of Ashenvale. He was not a villain. Wren would think about that a lot afterward. That was the whole problem. There was no villain anywhere in this. There was just a chart on a wall with 640 tally marks on it, and a man who had been told, by every engineer he had, that adding one more mark to it would cost him 5. He listened to the file, he looked at the plot, he rubbed his face with both hands. 11 Hertz, he said. "Yes, sir." "You know what else is 11 Hertz, Corporal? The main cistern outfall when it's half-choked, which it is. It's been half-choked with rubble for 9 days. Sir, it's periodic. Water is periodic. Water is the most periodic thing in the universe." He said it wearily, not unkindly. "Slugs of water in a choked pipe, air pockets belching. It'll pulse for hours and stop for hours and pulse again. Pike, back me up, you know this." Pike's jaw worked. "Sir, a choked outfall doesn't hold a 3-tone contour." "Doesn't it?" "No, sir, it smears. This has asterisk shape asterisk. It's the same shape every time, and it's the shape of the hearth song. Which you know because I've been listening to it in the shelter tents for 9 days and calling it nothing," Pike said, and his voice cracked right down the middle, and he had to stop. Vance sat back. He looked at the tent roof for a long moment. Then he said, "Get Warden Andrel." Warden Hesh Andrel was the Kesari structural authority for the Ashenvale recovery, and he arrived with a roll of survey sheets under his arm, and the expression of a man who has been arguing with the ground for 9 days and losing. He listened. He looked at the plot. He did not dismiss it. That was the thing Wren had not expected, and the thing that made the next 40 minutes so much worse. "It may be a child," he said. "I grant it may be." Then Wren started. "Corporal," he unrolled the sheets on Vance's desk and weighted them with a mug, a lamp, and his own long gray hand. "Look, this is grid 19. This is what we know of it as of last night." She looked. She did not understand most of it, but she understood the red. "The low market floor did not break," Andrel said. "It hinged. It came down on the cistern galleries as one piece tilted, and it is resting, Corporal, not settled on 3 points. Here, and here," he tapped. "The eastern point is a market pillar. The southern point is a stair core. The northern point is a spoil pile that we ourselves created on day 2 when we cut the sector 4 at it, and which we did not know was load-bearing until it began to take load." Wren's mouth was dry. "So we go in the south, the stair core, it's—" "The stair core moved 11 centimeters on day 6, Andrel said. 11, in one afternoon. If it goes, the market floor comes off its hinge and drops 2.5 meters onto everything beneath it, and everything beneath it is the galleries, and anyone in the galleries, rescuer or rescued, will be inside a closed hand." He looked up. "And in 6 days, when the season turns, the aquifer rises. It has risen every year for 2,000 years. When it rises, it fills the galleries to the roof." 6 days, said Vance. "Between 4 and 8. Then the lower galleries are a lake." Nobody spoke. Wren heard, very distantly, the yard waking up outside, a truck starting, someone laughing, the ordinary morning noise of a machine that had finished a job and was going home. "So we've got days," she said. "Days, that's not nothing." "Sir Warden, that's not nothing. We can shore the stair core. We can go in through the adit, we can." "What?" Andrel said. He said it gently. That was the unbearable part. "Corporal, I have 9 cutting crews. 6 of them are Terran and they are leaving in 38 hours because their charter ends and their government will not extend it. I have 3 Kesari crews and 2 of them are digging out the water plant, because if the water plant is not running in 11 days, 40,000 survivors in the upper terraces begin to die of something much less dramatic than a collapse. That is the arithmetic. It is a filthy arithmetic. I did not write it. He rolled up his sheets. And he said, "There is the Concord." Vance closed his eyes. "And Lund. The Registrar has closed the ledger on grid 19. He closed it lawfully on the 9th day, as the Concord requires, and every hearth that lost has been tolled, and the Anlon is tonight." Andrel's throat membrane pulled tight. To reopen it on 11 hertz of noise, and it may be noise, is to take 400 grieving families and lift them up by the throat and hold them there for 6 more days and then, most likely, drop them. Registrar Anlon will call that cruelty. And Corporal, I have known him 30 years, and he will not be entirely wrong. He went to the tent flap. He stopped. "I am sorry," he said, to nobody in particular, and went out. Vance sat with his hands on the desk for a long time. "Sir," Wren said. Corporal Halloway, he didn't look at her. He looked at his chart on the wall, at 640 little inked marks in 11 neat columns. "I'm going to say this once, and I want you to hear all of it, because you're 19 and you're good and I've watched you work, and I would like you to still be alive at 29 to work some more. There is a version of this where you're right, and in that version I put crews under that floor, and the stair core lets go on the 2nd day, and I lose 11 people, and I do not find a child, because there is no child, because it was a pipe. And there is a version where you're wrong and I do nothing, and I sleep badly for the rest of my life, and 400 families bury their dead on schedule and begin, very slowly, to heal. And I have to choose between those 2 versions with what I have on this desk, which is nothing, which is a smear at 11 hertz. He turned around. "Demob proceeds," he said. "Grid 19 stays closed. That's my order and it's going in the log." Wren stood very straight. "Yes, sir," she said. She saluted, she turned, she got as far as the tent flap. "Halloway." She stopped. "Don't," Merritt Vance said quietly to her back. "Whatever it is you've already decided to do, don't." Lance Corporal Wren Halloway, 19 years old, stood in the doorway of the tent with the morning light on her face and did not answer him, because she had been raised not to lie to officers. The Anlon was held at the 6th hour, in the great empty market square of the 2nd terrace, and 460 hearths came. Wren watched it from the colonnade, because she could not make herself not watch it. There was no fire, no music, no procession. That was what got her. The Kesari did not do any of the things a human would have done. They simply came in their brushed coats, and they stood in the square in the blue evening, and Registrar Sevesh Anlon stood on the old auction step and read out names. 411 names. It took him an hour and 40 minutes. He did not hurry and he did not falter, and he did not once look at his paper for longer than it took to find the next line, and Wren understood, watching him, that he had memorized as many of them as he could, because he thought it was owed. And after each name the crowd hummed, all of them together. One long note held and then let go, and it was not the 3-note song, it was a different thing, a flat, final, closing sound, and Wren felt it in the stone of the colonnade under her boots and in the roots of her teeth, and it was the loneliest noise she had ever heard in her life. She will be named among the still, she will be kept. Name hum, name hum. Chilia Shal, said the Registrar, 6 years. And 460 hearths hummed her closed. Wren looked for the mother and could not find her in the crowd, and then she looked away from the crowd entirely, at the 3rd terrace colonnade opposite, and there she was. Yenna Ashal was standing at the rail, facing away from the square, facing the wound. She was not humming the closing note. She was humming 3. "This is the stupidest thing I have ever done," said Duro Pike, and I once tried to argue with a customs officer on Sever 9, so understand the scale of what I am saying. Keep your voice down. I am keeping my voice down. This is my quiet voice. This is the voice of a man who is about to be court-martialed quietly. It was 02:30. They were crouched behind the water plant spoil heap at the edge of the demob yard with 3 bags of gear and a set of blue Kesari coveralls that did not fit either of them. And Wren was, for the 4th time, going over the plan, which was less a plan than a sequence of things she intended to do until someone stopped her. The demob was half done. 6 of the 9 cutting crews had already trucked out to the airhead. The ear had rolled at midnight, which meant the array was gone, and with it any hope of another log, another confirmation, another shred of anything that could be put in front of Merritt Vance and made to look like proof. There would be no proof. There would only be going down and looking. Wren had spent the day building a thing. It was ugly. It was a Kesari hearthlamp resonator, the low, heavy brass drum that Kesari families kept on the mantle to warm a room with a hum, with the diaphragm cut out and a Terran geophone element epoxied into the mouth of it and a hand crank amp bolted to the side. Pike had rewired the gain 3 times, swearing. It could hear down to about 6 Hertz, which was 6 Hertz better than anything the Relief Command owned, and it weighed 11 kilos, and it was the single least military object Wren had ever carried. They called it the bucket. "Say it back to me," Wren said. Pike sighed. "We cross at the north line where the fence is down. We get to the Sector 4 adit. We do not go under the market floor. We stay in the adit and the top gallery, which is off the hinge and is, quote, structurally boring, unquote. We listen. If we hear it, we mark it, we come out, and we take the mark to Vance, and he has something on his desk that isn't nothing." He looked at her. "And we do not, under any circumstances, go past the second bulkhead. And if the ground so much as clears its throat, we run like cowards." "Good. Halloway," he rubbed his eyes. "What do we do if we hear it and he still says no?" Wren shouldered the bucket. "Then we'll have heard it," she said, "and we'll know and we'll do the next thing." "That's not an answer." "No," Wren agreed, "it isn't," and she went over the spoil heap. They got about 200 meters. The figure that stepped out of the dark at the fence line was tall and gray, and had its hands up, palms out, and Wren's heart stopped so completely that she genuinely thought, for one absurd second, that she had died of it. "Do not run," said the figure in careful Terran. "Please, I am not a warden. I have been waiting here for 3 hours and I am extremely cold." It was a young Kesari. Very young. Wren was bad at their ages, but this one had the long, soft look of someone barely out of their teens, with the throat membrane still slightly pale, and they were wearing a Concord technician smock and carrying, of all things, a ration tin. "My name is Son Ivar," they said. I was the junior acoustician on the Concord array team, the one that ran with yours. I was in the tent, Corporal, when the Terran officer said 11 Hertz, a breath. I have not slept. Do you understand? I have not slept because I wrote the filter mask." Silence. "I wrote it," Son Ivar said again. 8 years old, that mask. It was designed for adult voices. It was designed for my asterisk voice. When your command asked me for the Kesari floor, I gave them 40 Hertz and I was proud of it. And I did not think about children, because children are not who I imagined, because I am 21 years old and I have never had one, and it did not occur to me. The ration tin was shaking in their hands. "I know grid 19, they said. "I laid 9 of the 11 sensors myself. I know where 6 is. I know the adit. I know which gallery it looks down into, and I know the drain plan of the whole of the low market because I read it before I laid the cable, and I have brought it." They held up a data slate in the other hand. "And I have brought food because I assumed you two would not think of it." Pike said, "I told you we should have brought food." Shut up, said Wren. She looked at the young Kesari for a long moment in the dark. If you come with us, she said, you're finished. You know that. Your people will call it the worst thing anybody's done here, digging up the Anlon. There's a word for it, right? For someone who won't let the dead be dead. Yes, said son Ivar. There is a word. It is *Veshinka*. It means roughly the one who scratches at the door. Their throat membrane fluttered. It is a very ugly word. My grandmother used it about Terrans. About Terrans. Saw a broadcast once, from your homeworld. There had been an earthquake, and there was a woman in it who dug at a slab with her hands for 6 days, and the reporters put her on every screen in the Concord as an example of what you are. Son Ivar's eyes were wet, which Wren had not known Kesari eyes could do. My grandmother watched her and she said, look how they will not let go. Look how they claw at the ground and disturb the still. What a shameless people. What in the word does not translate? What an undignified people. They swallowed. I have thought about that woman, son Ivar said, every hour since the tent. Wren held out the bucket. Then carry this, she said. It's heavy and I'm tired. The Sector 4 adit was a hole in the world. It had been cut on day 2 by a Terran crew with a rock saw, 3 meters across, angling down through the fallen terrace stone at about 20 degrees, shored with prop frames every 2 meters, and it had been the way in and out of Grid 19 for a week. Now it had a red tag on a stake at the mouth, and a spool of Concord warning tape strung across it, and someone had chalked on the shoring the abbreviation that Wren had seen on a dozen worlds and never once seen used on anything but concrete. Closed, no entry, nothing live. Son Ivar stopped at the tape. I'm afraid, they said matter-of-factly. Yeah, said Wren. You are not. I'm terrified. She stepped over the tape. It just doesn't do anything. The adit swallowed them. Wren had been down it 11 times and it was completely different in the dark and alone. The lamps threw the prop frames into long marching shadows. The air was cold and wet and smelled of clay and burnt stone, and something Swedish underneath that she made herself not think about. Water ran somewhere. Water always ran somewhere. And the whole hill above them ticked and creaked and made small dry sounds like a house settling in the night. Except the house was 100,000 tons of a dead market, and the night was 9 days old. 50 meters, 100, the adit leveled. They came out into the top gallery. It was a cistern, one of the old ones, a barrel-vaulted hall of dressed stone 40 meters long and 8 high, built 2,000 years ago to hold winter water for a city that no longer existed above it. The slip had filled a third of it with rubble at the far end, a great choked slope of broken market floor, and left the rest of it eerily, obscenely intact. There were still lamp brackets on the walls. There was still a rope handrail. There was a wooden bench, and on the bench, a folded cloth, where some cistern warden had sat down at some point in the last 2,000 years and never come back for it. And beyond the rubble slope, under the tilted slab of the low market floor, was the rest of Grid 19. Sensor 6, said son Ivar, in a whisper that carried horribly. They pointed at the rubble slope. Under that, about 4 meters in, it was in the gallery mouth. Set up, said Wren. They set up. The bucket went on the stone, mouth down, on the cleanest slab they could find. Pike lay on his belly with the headphones on and the crank in his hand and his eyes shut, and Wren and son Ivar sat with their backs to the wall on either side of him, and they turned the lamps off to save them, and the dark came down like a lid. And they listened. For an hour there was nothing. There was the pulse of water somewhere below, and there was the tick and grind of the settling floor, and once there was a long low grunt from somewhere off to the east that made all 3 of them freeze until it stopped. There was Wren's own heart. There was the sound of Duro Pike cranking, and stopping and cranking. At the 90th minute, Pike sat up and said, "It's a pipe." Wren said nothing. "I'm serious. Listen to me. I've got a periodic at 11.5 and it's a asterisk slug flow. It's water and air going through a choked line. It does the down-down hold because that's what a asterisk bubble does asterisk Halloway. That's what a bubble in a horizontal line asterisk does asterisk. Then why did it stop for 6 hours a day? Wren said. Because. Why did it get shorter every day? Because the water level. Why did it stop at 50 seconds on the 9th day and never come back? Pike's mouth was open. He shut it. Because it's getting tired, Wren said. Her voice did not sound like her own. Because it's been 9 days and it's 6 years old and it's cold and it's hungry and it is asterisk getting tired. And that's not a pipe, Pike. Pipes don't get tired. The dark was absolute. Son, said Wren, do you know the song? Every hearth is different. Do you know hers asterisk? A long pause. I heard her at the rail, said son Ivar quietly. Everyone heard her at the rail. Then hum it. Corporal, my membrane is grown. I cannot make a child's tone, and she will not answer an adult tone. She will think it is a warden. She will think it is. Hum it anyway, said Wren, and let her think whatever she wants as long as she thinks somebody came. And son Ivar, 21 years old, who had written the mask, put their head back against 2,000 years of cistern stone in the pitch dark under a dead city, and hummed. Down, down, hold. It went through Wren's chest like a hand. Gap. Down, down, hold. Nothing. They did it for 20 minutes. Son's voice began to shred. Pike lay with the headphones crushed to his skull and his fist white on the crank and his face. Wren could see it now, lit from below by the reader's dull green, screwed up like a man being hit. Down, down, hold. Gap. And then Duro Pike made a sound. It was not a word. It was a strangled, animal, undignified sound, the sound of a man whose chest has been opened, and he came up off the floor onto his knees with the headphones half off in both hands over his mouth. Pike. He couldn't talk. Pike. He turned the reader around. 11 Hertz, a smear, a shape. Down, down, hold. She answered, said Duro Pike through his hands. Oh God, Halloway, she answered. Wren was on her feet, and 11 steps up the rubble slope before either of them caught her. It took both of them. Pike got an arm around her chest, and son Ivar got in front and put a long gray hand flat on her sternum and held it there. And Wren fought them, hard, for about 4 seconds, and then stopped, because the slope had shifted under her boot and dropped a fist-sized stone into the dark, and it had taken a very long time to hit anything. Not that way, son Ivar said. Corporal, not that way. You will bring it down on her. Wren stood shaking in the dark with her hands out. Then which way, she said. Son Ivar lit the slate. There is one other way into the lower galleries, they said, and their voice was steady now, and Wren realized the young Kesari had been thinking about this, hard, for hours, and had simply been waiting to be sure it was worth saying. It is on the drain plan. It is a maintenance shaft, a asterisk throat asterisk, we call them. They run between the cistern levels for the wardens to clear the silt. It comes down from the second bulkhead into the lower gallery, and it is not under the hinge, and it did not move in the slip, because it is cut into the escarpment itself. Then we go now. It is 40 centimeters wide, said son Ivar. Silence. 40, said Pike. At the narrowest, for perhaps 3 meters. Son Ivar looked at them both, and their throat membrane pulled tight and still. I am too tall. You specialist are too broad in the shoulder, and you have a bad shoulder, and you would jam, and you would die there. Slowly, both of them turned and looked at Wren Halloway, who was 1.58 meters, and who weighed 51 kilos, and who was 19 years old. Wren looked back. Well, she said, that's convenient. And that was the moment the lamps hit them. 3 of them, hard and white from the mouth of the adit, and a voice like a loading crane said, H-A-L-L-O-W-A-Y. Sergeant O'Dolly's rook came down the gallery with her jaw set and murder in her stride, and behind her, ducking under the shoring with a survey roll under his arm and an expression of purest disbelief, came Warden Hesh-Andrel. "Sergeant, listen. You will stand at attention," Rook said, "and you will shut your mouth." Wren stood at attention. In a cistern, under a dead city, covered in clay, she had never in her life felt more absurd or more certain. Rook walked a slow circle around the three of them. She looked at the bucket. She looked at the crank amp. She looked at Duro Pike, who was still on his knees, and at son Ivar, who had gone the pale gray that meant a Kesari was frightened past speech. "Specialist Pike," she said, "your career is over." "Yes, Sergeant." "You knew that when you crossed the fence." "Yes, Sergeant." "Was it worth it?" Duro Pike, 24 years old, best acoustic tech in the battalion, held up the reader with a shaking hand. "Sergeant," he said. She answered. Rook took the reader. She looked at it for a long time. Wren watched her read the trace the way she read everything, slowly, once, all the way through, with no expression whatsoever, and then she turned and held it out to Warden Hesh-Andrel. Andrel did not take it. "Warden," said Rook. "I heard the specialist," Andrel said. His voice was very quiet in the vault. "I heard him from the adit. I have been standing in this gallery for 2 minutes and 11 seconds, Sergeant, and in that time I have been trying to construct, in my head, a way for that sound to be water." He took the reader. He looked at it. His long gray hand began, quite visibly, to shake, and he set the reader down on the bench beside the 2,000-year-old folded cloth, because he could not hold it steady. "It is not water," said Warden Hesh-Andrel. And then he sat down on the bench, next to the cloth, and put his face in his hands, and said something in Kesari that son Ivar would not translate then and would not translate later, and Wren never asked again. They got out at dawn. The camp was almost gone. That was the thing Wren remembered, coming up out of the adit into a gray, wet morning, and seeing the staging yard 3/4 empty, the tent frame stripped, the pallets stacked, the whole apparatus of 640 saved lives folded up and ready to be flown somewhere else where it was needed more. Merritt Vance was standing at the top of the ramp with his hands in his pockets. He had been told. Rook had signaled ahead. He stood there in the drizzle and watched a 19-year-old lance corporal, a disgraced specialist, a Kesari junior technician, a sergeant, and the structural authority of the entire Ashenvale recovery walk up out of a red-tagged hole in the ground, and he looked, Wren thought, like a man watching his own life arrive. "Warden," he said. "There is a child alive under grid 19, said Hesh-Andrel. The drizzle fell. "Say it again," said Vance. "There is a child alive under grid 19, and I have been telling you for 9 days that no one is, and I was wrong, and I will carry that, but not now. Now I need 40 people, and I need them in 90 minutes. Vance's face did something complicated and terrible. "I have 22 people left on this planet," he said. "The rest are at the airhead. The transports lift in 6 hours, and they are not mine. They belong to a charter company on Vestral Reach, and if I hold them I have to pay for them out of an operations budget I do not control, and the paperwork for that goes through a Concord liaison office that is closed until—" He stopped. He looked at the sky. "I'm doing it again." "Yes," said Andrel. "I'm doing the arithmetic again." "Yes." Merritt Vance took his hands out of his pockets. "Sergeant Rook," he said, "get on the net. Every crew, every truck, every hand. Tell the airhead the transports are held on my authority, and if the charter company wants to argue about it, they can find me under 100,000 tons of somebody's market. Warden, I want your engineers and I want the water plant crews." "You cannot have the water plant crews," said Andrel. "Then I want everybody else, Halloway." Wren snapped to. "You disobeyed a direct order." Yes, sir. I'm going to have to do something about that. Yes, sir. Later, said Merritt Vance. Much, much later, go and eat something. You're going down that throat, and I don't want you fainting in it. It took 9 hours to get the shaft open, and in those 9 hours, Ashenvale found out. Nobody planned it. There was no announcement. Rook put out a net call for hands, and a Kesari water plant foreman heard it on an open channel and told his cousin. And by the 4th hour there were 300 people on the second terrace who had not been asked to come, standing in the drizzle at the edge of the warning tape, watching. By the 6th hour there were 1,000. They did not cheer, they did not shout. They stood in the rain in their brushed coats, and they watched Terran soldiers and Kesari engineers haul prop frames and shoring plate and hydraulic jacks up a slope of broken city. And every so often somebody at the front would take something out of a bag, bread, a flask, a folded blanket, and pass it forward over the tape into a stranger's hands. And at some point, Wren never found out when or who started it, they began to hum. Not the closing note. 3 notes, down, down, hold. 1,000 Kesari in the rain, on the terrace of a broken city, humming a 6-year-old's hearth song at the ground. Wren was inside the second bulkhead when it started. She felt it before she heard it. The stone of the cistern picked it up and passed it down, and the whole vault, 40 meters of 2,000-year-old dressed rock, began very faintly to sing, and Duro Pike took his headphones off and stared at the ceiling with his mouth open and said, "What in God's name is that?" "That's the city," said son Ivar. Yenna Ashal came at the 7th hour. She came alone, up the ramp, past the tape that nobody thought to stop her at, in her brushed coat with her hair bound tight, and she walked into the middle of a working relief site as if she had been sent for. Wren was at the mouth of the throat with a harness half on. She had not slept in 31 hours. Her hands were shaking so badly she had failed the buckle twice. Rook had just told her, in a flat voice with no room in it, the 3 facts of the next hour. The throat was open. The throat was 41 centimeters at its worst. And the aquifer, which had been rising for 9 days while everyone was busy being right about arithmetic, was now 9 meters below the lower gallery, and coming up at a rate of about a meter every 4 hours. And then there was a stillness in the yard, and Wren looked up, and the mother was there. Everyone had stopped. Every soldier, every engineer, every Kesari with a shoring plate on their shoulder had stopped and turned, and in the silence Yenna Ashal walked across the wet stone to the hole in the ground, and looked at it, and then looked at the small human girl in the harness beside it. "You," she said. "Yes, ma'am." The one who did not say sorry. "Yes, ma'am." Yenna Ashal looked at her for a long moment. She looked at Wren's hands, the split knuckles, the tape, the black nails, the way she had in the records room. Then she reached inside her coat and took out a shape of green glass on a cord. It was a hearth-token, the one from the box, the one Wren had sealed in with her own hands 11 days into the worst month of her life, and she recognized it the way you recognize your own signature, and something in her chest tore. Yenna put the cord over Wren's head. "It is warm," she said. "It is a lamp token. It holds a hum for a long time if you give it one. My mother made it and I gave it to her, and she liked it because it is green." Her flat, dark eyes did not blink. "She is 6 years old, soldier. She is small and she is loud when she is not frightened, and she does not like the dark, and she will not know your face, and she will not understand your words. So when you find her, you will not speak to her." Wren's throat closed. "Ma'am." "You will not speak," said Yenna Ashal. "You will hum asterisk, and you will hum this." And she leaned down, so close that Wren could feel the low pressure of her throat membrane in the air between them, and she hummed the 3 notes, slow, into the hearth-token pressed between them. "Down, down, hold." "Again," she said. Wren, whose voice could not go anywhere near 11 hertz, whose species had never once needed to make a sound below the range of its own hearing, opened her mouth and tried. It came out as a hum. Human, thin, an octave and a half too high. A ridiculous, undignified, entirely wrong noise. Down, down, hold. Yenna Ashal listened to it. That is not the song, she said. No, ma'am. That is nothing like the song. No, ma'am. It will do, said Yenna Ashal and stepped back. Go and get my daughter. The throat was worse than the plan. Son Ivar had said 3 meters at 40 centimeters. Son Ivar had been reading a 2,000-year-old drainage survey, and 2,000-year-old drainage surveys, it turned out, were optimistic. Wren went in feet first on her back, because the last 4 meters angled down, and there was no other way to do it and still be able to reach anything. She had a lamp strapped to her chest, a comms line spooling off her belt, an oxygen bottle she was not going to be able to use if it came to that, and the green glass token on a cord around her neck, and she had left her helmet at the top because her helmet did not fit. 41 centimeters. She was 51 kilos and 1 meter 58, and she had honestly thought, on the way in, that it would be like a tight crawl. It was not like a crawl, it was like being swallowed. At 2 meters the shaft turned and squeezed and her ribs would not go, and she had to breathe all the way out, all the way, until there was nothing left in her at all, and then push with her heels, and the stone took the skin off both hips through the coveralls and she went 4 centimeters. At 3 meters, she stopped being able to turn her head. Halloway, Rook's voice tinny in the earpiece, very calm. Rook was always calm, and Wren had never before understood that it was a thing Rook was doing on purpose for other people at cost. Talk to me. Wren could not get enough air in to talk. She thought with a clarity that surprised her about Cutter's Bend. She had been 11. The levee had gone in the night and taken 4 houses off the bank, and her cousin Tio, who was 9, had gone into the water with them, and the town had dragged the ditches for 2 days, and everybody, all the sensible adults, all the people with charts, had known by the 2nd day what they were dragging for. And on the 3rd day, old Mrs. Arno had refused to go home, and she had stood in the brown water up to her waist at the bottom of the culvert road with a boat hook, alone, being ridiculous, being undignified asterisk. And at 4 in the afternoon she had put the hook into a knot of drift and pulled out a 9-year-old boy who had been standing on a submerged tractor in an air pocket under a collapsed barn for 51 hours, screaming himself hoarse at a wall of water that nobody could hear him through. Tio was 22 now. He fixed pumps. He was fine. He was so completely, boringly fine that Wren had gone whole years without thinking about it. She had never once in her whole life believed that the sensible people were right. Halloway. Wren emptied her lungs. She pushed. The stone let her go. She came out of the throat into the lower gallery at a height of 2 meters and dropped, badly, onto a slope of silt and broken tile, and lay there in the dark with her lamp knocked crooked and every rib on fire and no air in her at all. And for a while she just made small horrible sounds and could not do anything else. Then she got up. The lower gallery was smaller than the one above, and the roof was wrong. That was the first thing she understood. The great slab of the low market floor had come down across it at an angle, and the eastern half of the vault was simply asterisk gone asterisk, filled, packed solid, with a wall of compressed rubble that had come to a stop about 1.5 meters from her face. The western half was a wedge, a long triangular void, high at her end, closing down to nothing 40 meters away, propped up by 2,000 years of good masonry and whatever luck there was. There was water on the floor. It came to her ankles. It was moving very slightly, and it was cold, and it had a skin of gray dust on it, and every 4 or 5 seconds it lapped. She put the lamp on the wall. She unhooked the bucket from its line. Pike had lowered it down the throat behind her, and set it on a fallen block, and she put her hand on the cold brass, and she took the green glass token in her other hand, and she stood in a foot of black water under 100,000 tons of a dead city. And Lance Corporal Wren Halloway, 19 years old, of the 3rd Expeditionary Relief Battalion, filled her aching, human, entirely inadequate lungs, and hummed, "Down, down, hold." Her voice was thin. It was high. It was a ludicrous, tinny, mammalian sound in a stone vault built for a species with a drum in its throat, and it went out across the water and into the dark, and it was, Wren knew, exactly nothing like the song. Gap. Down, down, hold. Gap. The water lapped. The floor above her groaned and settled and dropped a handful of grit into her hair. Down, down, hold. And out of the dark at the closing end of the wedge, from somewhere behind the fallen market stalls, 40 meters away and very small and very hoarse and entirely, unmistakably live asterisk, something hummed back. Wren Halloway made a sound that she was never afterward able to describe, and that Duro Pike, listening on the line at the top of the throat, described to a Concord board of inquiry 6 weeks later as "not language, sir, and I'd rather not try." Then she started walking. It took 11 minutes to cross 40 meters because the floor was not a floor. It was silt and broken tile and the fallen contents of a market, crates, a cart wheel, 100 sodden bolts of cloth, a brass scale pan, the whole cheerful clutter of an ordinary Tuesday morning, pressed into the mud under a foot of black water. Twice she had to go on her hands and knees under a sagging beam. Once she put her weight on something that gave, and the ceiling made a noise, and she stood absolutely still for 90 seconds with her eyes shut and her heart going like a hammer, and the earpiece said "Halloway," and she said "wait," and the earpiece waited. And the whole way she hummed, "Down, down, hold, gap." And the whole way it came back, closer, ragged, sometimes late, sometimes not at all for a minute or two, and then again, urgent, doubled, tripled, as though whoever was making it had had a thought and become terrified that the humming would stop. "I'm coming," Wren thought, humming, waiting. "I'm coming, I'm coming, I'm coming." At the closing end of the wedge, where the roof came down to a meter, and the water thinned to a wet shine on the tiles, 3 market stalls had fallen together against the wall and made a shape like a tent. There was a gap under them. There was a light in the gap. Wren got down on her belly in the mud and looked in. It was a hearth lamp, a little brass one, a stall keeper's, the kind that ran on a chemical wick for weeks and gave off a low, steady rose-colored light and a very small amount of heat. Somebody had propped it upright on a folded crate. Behind it, on a raised stone plinth that had once been the base of a spice seller's counter, a meter above the water, was a nest. That was the only word for it. A nest of bolt cloth, good cloth, market cloth, dozens of meters of it, dragged and pulled and heaped and burrowed into, and among it a small tin cup, and a stack of hard flat cakes wrapped in wax paper, and an empty wax paper, and another in a neat little pile in the corner, because whoever was living there had been asterisk tidying up. And in the middle of the nest, sitting bolt upright with a cloth bolt clutched to her chest, and her enormous flat dark eyes fixed on the gap, and her small pale throat membrane going like a bird's heart, was Chilia Shaw. 6 years old. Filthy, skinny, horse to nothing, hair a disaster, wearing 1 shoe. Absolutely, entirely, ferociously alive. Wren Halloway lay in the mud with her chin in the water and looked at her and could not move, could not speak, could not do anything at all except make, very quietly, an appalling, wet, undignified noise into the silt. Then she remembered her orders. "You will not speak to her, you will hum." Wren got up onto her elbows, in the gap in the rose-colored light, with 100,000 tons of city over her head and a green glass token swinging from her neck, and she filled her lungs. "Down, down, hold." Chilia Shaw did not move. Wren did it again, and again. She hummed the wrong song in the wrong voice in the wrong octave in a stranger's throat at an alien child in a hole in the ground. And on the fourth time Chili's mouth opened and the child hummed it back, low and cracked and small. And then she said something in Kesari in a voice like a torn rag, and Wren did not understand a single word of it, and she did not need to, because the child said it while holding out one hand. Wren went in on her belly. She came up onto the plinth slowly, an arm's length away, and knelt in the cloth, and did not touch her. She lifted the green glass token off over her head and held it out on the flat of her palm. Chilia Shah looked at it. She reached out and took it. She turned it over. She held it up to the little rose lamp and looked through it, and the light came through green onto her face. And then she began to cry, really cry, properly, wretchedly, the way a 6-year-old cries when the grown-up finally comes, and it is at long last, safe to stop being brave. And she went face first into the front of Wren Halloway's filthy coveralls and grabbed 2 fistfuls of them and screamed asterisk. Wren put her arms around her. "Yeah," she said out loud in Terran into an alien child's dusty hair, breaking her orders completely and forever. "Yeah, I know, I've got you, you're all right. You were asterisk so good. You were so good, you clever girl, you kept singing. In her earpiece, 40 meters and one impossible stone throwed away, Sergeant O'Dalley's rook said, in a voice that was not calm at all. "Halloway." "Report." Wren Halloway lifted her head. "Grid 19, she said. "Lower gallery, west wedge at the spice counter." She swallowed. "I have Chilia Shah," she said. "She's 6. She's got a lamp, a water seep, and about 40 stall cakes, and she has been rationing them, Sergeant. She has been rationing them. There's still 11 left. She's cold and she's hungry and her voice is gone and she has scratches on both knees and that is all asterisk. She is not hurt. Do you hear me? She is not hurt." There was a sound on the line like a wave breaking. It was the yard, it was the terrace. It was 1,000 Kesari and 22 Terrans, and a warden and a sergeant and a gray careful man with a chart on his wall, and somebody had left an open channel patched to the site speakers, and Ashenvale heard it, heard she is not hurt, and Ashenvale made a noise that they were still talking about on that world 11 years later. Getting her out took 4 hours, and it was not the part they made the broadcasts about, but it was the part Wren dreamed about for years. She could not go back through the throat, not carrying a child. 41 centimeters had nearly killed her empty. It would have killed them both full. So they cut. Warden Hesh Andrel did the thing that no structural authority in the Concord had ever willingly done, and put a saw into the eastern rubble pack. The compressed wall of market floor that was, in his own words, the only thing between that gallery and the sky, and also the only way out of it. And he cut a hole 4 meters long through it while it took load, on his own authority, with his own hands on the controls, because he refused to ask anyone else to. It took 3 hours and 11 minutes. The floor above them talked the whole time, twice it shouted. And in the lower gallery, in the rose light, Lance Corporal Wren Halloway sat in a nest of market cloth with a 6-year-old alien in her lap, and the water rising a centimeter every 4 minutes up the side of the plinth, and did the only thing she could do, which was keep the kid from noticing. She taught her to play a hand-slapping game from Cutter's Bend. She taught her the word asterisk soldier asterisk, and the word asterisk dig asterisk, and the word asterisk soon asterisk. She let her eat 2 of the stall cakes and drink from the tin cup, and then, when Chili held out the tin cup to asterisk her asterisk, with a very serious look, Wren drank from it too, and said thank you, and meant it more than she had ever meant anything. She learned that Chili had gone down to the cistern stair on market day, because she had dropped her coat clip through the grating and her mother would have been angry. She learned this in fragments of Kesari she did not understand, acted out with hands, over an hour, and she got about 1/10 of it, and son Ivar got the rest of it later and had to leave the room. She learned that Chili had eaten nothing at all for the first 2 days because she had been waiting to be found, and had then, on the 3rd day, gone and found the stall cakes and counted them and worked out a 6-year-old, alone in the dark, working it out how many she could have. And she learned, when Chili fell asleep against her chest at some point in the 4th hour with the green glass token clutched in one fist, that a Kesari child sleeping makes a sound, a very small one, low and steady, under everything. Down, down, hold. Even asleep. 9 days, Wren thought, holding her in the dark in the water. 9 days and nobody came and you kept calling anyway. We are so alike, and nobody told either of us. They came out at the 11th hour past dawn, through Andrel's hole, into a driving gray rain. Wren came out first on her back, dragged on a board by 6 people, with a shawl strapped to her chest under a foil blanket and both of Wren's arms locked around her, because they had tried to take the child at the mouth of the cut, and the child had made a noise like a whistle and would not let go, and Warden Andrel had said, wearily, "Let her keep the soldier," and so they had dragged them both out together. The rain hit Wren's face. She heard, before she could see anything, the sound. 1,000 people, 2,000, the whole 2nd terrace and the 3rd and the colonnade above it and the ramps and the broken rail, packed solid with Kesari standing in the rain, and they were not cheering because Kesari do not cheer. They were humming. Down, down, hold. 2,000 throats, all of them in the rain, over a broken city, and the stone under Wren's back was singing with it, and the water in the puddles was shivering with it, and the foil blanket was buzzing against her cheek, and inside her arms a very small person heard it and went completely rigid and lifted her head, and screamed one word. Wren didn't know the word. She learned it later. It is the first word Kesari children learn, and it means, roughly, the one who is at the door asterisk. The crowd broke. Not toward them, away, sideways, folding open like a mouth, and out of it, running in a coat that had been brushed and was now soaked and gray with rain, came Yenna a shawl. She did not scream, she did not shout. She came across the wet stone at a dead sprint and went down on her knees so hard that Wren heard it, and she got her arms around her daughter and the soldier and the board and all of it, indiscriminately, everything, the whole tangle, and she pressed her face into Chili's filthy hair, and she made no sound whatsoever. Her throat membrane was going like a struck drum. Wren, crushed underneath, felt it through her own sternum. It was not a hum, it was not any note at all, it was just a heart running. The Kesari have no word for the sound a mother makes when the 9th day is wrong. They had to make one afterward. Registrar Sevesh Anlon came to the medical tent that night. Wren was on a cot with 4 cracked ribs, both hips raw to the meat, an IV in her arm, and a formal charge of disobeying a direct order pending against her, which Coordinator Merritt Vance had drafted himself, filed himself, and as he explained, standing at the foot of the cot with his hat in his hands and his eyes red, intended to fight himself, personally, in front of any board that cared to convene, for as long as it took. They'll throw it out, he said. Rook will testify, Andrel will testify, half the Concord will testify, and if they don't throw it out, Halloway, I will resign publicly and I will make it extremely loud. Sir, Wren said, you don't have to. I filed it because it's true, Vance said, and I'll fight it because that's also true, both things. That's the job. He put his hat back on. 641, he said, and his voice went and he left. And then the registrar came in. He stood in the door of the tent for a long time, tall, gray, immaculate, holding nothing. Wren tried to sit up. It went badly. Do not, Anlon said. He came and stood beside the cot. I read 411 names, he said. I read them in the correct order. I did not falter. I have done this 11 times in my life on 3 worlds, and I have never faltered, because to falter is to make the family carry your grief in addition to their own, and that is theft. His hands were folded in front of him. His throat membrane was pulled tight and still. And I read one name that was not true. Sir, 410 families are burying their dead correctly tonight, the registrar said, and I do not know now if they are. I will not know ever again. Every Anlon I read for the rest of my life will have a hole in it, Corporal, and the hole will be shaped like a 19-year-old with a brass bucket. He looked down at her. I did not come to thank you, he said. No, sir. I came because I wanted to see the face. He was quiet for a moment. On my world, he said, we say that grief is a room, and that the kind thing, the decent thing, is to help a person into it and close the door softly and let them furnish it. We are very good at this. We have been very good at it for 4,000 years. It is why our funerals are beautiful and our old people are not afraid. His voice did not change at all. And your people stand outside the door and scratch at it and howl and will not let it close. And we have laughed at you for 200 years, and there is a word for it, and the word is filthy, and I have used it. He inclined his head, a slow, deep, formal thing, the bow a Kesari gives to a hearth not his own. I was wrong, said Registrar Sevesh Anlon. You did not disturb the still. You went and got the living. There is a difference, and my people have not needed to know it for 4,000 years, and now we do, and we will have to build a word for it, and I have been trying since noon, and I cannot. He straightened. You will not be charged, he said, not by the Concord. The Concord will be doing something else. What's that, sir? Sevesh Anlon looked at the tent wall, where, beyond it, 1,000 people were still standing in the rain around a hole in the ground, humming 3 notes at the dark on the chance, that someone else was down there. Listening, he said, for a while longer to everything, even the noise. They found 2 more. Not that night. 11 days later in the flooded East Gallery, working from a rebuilt array with the mask taken off, no floor, no filter, nothing thrown away, Duro Pike heard something at 9 Hertz that everybody but him said was a pump. An old man and his grandson, day 20, alive. They named the rebuilt array after nobody, because Wren wouldn't let them. But the Concord did add a word to the Anlon, and it is spoken now on all their worlds, at the end, after the names of the still, and it is not a Kesari word at all. It is a borrowed one, mangled through a throat that was never built to say it, and it comes out sounding like a small stone dropped into water. It means, and we have not stopped looking. Wren Halloway shipped out 9 weeks later. She was 20 by then. Her ribs had knit crooked and ached before rain, which she said she didn't mind because it meant she always knew. She went down to the transport pad at dawn with a duffel on her good shoulder, and there was a crowd at the fence, because there was always a crowd at the fence now, and she had learned not to look at it, because looking at it made her cry, and then people put it on broadcasts. But somebody called her name. Not her name, the other one, the word she'd learned, the first one Kesari children learn. It went up from the fence in one high, cracked 6-year-old voice, and Wren Halloway stopped dead on the ramp and turned around. Yenna Ashal was at the wire, in a coat that had been brushed, and on her hip, too big to be carried and being carried anyway, in 2 shoes, with a green glass token on a cord around her neck and her hair a complete disaster, was her daughter. Chili let go of her mother with one hand and held it up, palm out, fingers spread the hand-slap game, from Cutter's Bend, that no one on Kel Ashen had ever played before, and that half the children of the 3rd Terrace now played every single day, without having the faintest idea where it came from. Wren dropped the duffel. She walked back down the ramp, across the wet stone to the fence. She put her hand up against the wire, palm out, and a small gray 4-fingered hand came up on the other side and pressed against it, and neither of them said anything, because there was nothing that needed saying, and because the last time Wren had spoken to this child she had been breaking a direct order in a foot of black water, and she had said, "I've got you," and it had been true, and it was still true, and it would go on being true for the rest of both their lives. Behind her, the transport spooled up. Yenna Ashal leaned in over her daughter's head and hummed 3 notes through the wire: down, down, hold, and Wren Halloway. 19 years old the day she went into the ground, and 20 the day she left it behind, hummed them back in the wrong octave, in the wrong voice, in a throat that was never built for it. It was nothing like the song. It did just fine,